starts working, it is out of control. Like because which of course in control would be technically a lucid dreamer, somebody who can control the dream, right? And so now that, we're, like looking at it from that level and we're saying, okay, so can we move back into the past and remove ourselves from an action or an event? And in order to kind of like, well, because the context of the story was to kind of say, well, that wasn't me, or to remove myself from the situation so that situation never occur.
Yes.
But the situation did occur. So what happens is that when we start messing around with time, which would be to rest around in our mind, like I'm going to erase that. We have to understand that what we actually do to ourselves as an organism is we go to the place that it is inside of us and we kill it and we seal off and cut off the area. Okay. Now, the important part of seeing it that way is that what happens if you seal off and cut off all of your senses, all like your heart, your brain, because all these different things that you don't like are lodged into these different parts of your real organism. In order for you not to feel it anymore, you have to go and actually, you have to, so you see what I'm saying? Like, this is something that's often missed. It's like, how do you stop caring? Like when you don't care anymore, like people don't care about the planet anymore. You know why? They're like, man, shit, I'm already dealing with it. How am I going to think about the planet? So it's technically, it's like it's a state of awareness where the being does not feel anymore. And if you look at the reality with all the cartoons or all of the TV shows, and somebody get their head blown off and something happens, and now there's a racial war, and so then it starts to just become I don't like. But if you say specifically, and this is just the awareness, because this is all one organism. If you don't like even a specific race, you start killing that race inside of you. So if a nation was the heart of the earth and you don't like that nation anymore in your mind, you kill your heart. But that goes across the board for everybody. So even if another group or nation is the brain of the organism and we don't like that being, we start killing our brain. Literally, that's how it all works. It's a feedback system that it was like so it was like when the design was created, there was never a greater design. So they just chose to continue to use the same design. This is what we're in. So that way, when we ever identify the design, we would identify everything. So it's not that, oh, there's a bunch of varieties. No, there's one design that can put forth a bunch of varieties. They say, oh, the big thing is made up of a bunch of small things. So it's a paradox. And when you start learning how to navigate it, it starts requiring you to, because like in these times, for instance, we've been discussing how, like where you would be, because we're a magnetic vehicle.
Yes.
If you stop caring, you would kind of be on the side of your vehicle.
Okay.
Because you wouldn't basically be attracted to your vehicle. That's why when you see magnets come, they snap together, right? If you ever get out of the body, you'll find that when you get closer to your body, you snap back in. Like it's like a magnetic attraction, because the whole field is magnetic. But when you don't want to be in the experience anymore because of pain and not caring, see, this is all stuff going on behind the scenes of the real organism that we're actually in. So when you stop caring, you stop attracting to the body. And so you start being on the side of the body. And being on the side of the body actually then allows the other things that you've created, what we call the eidolons, entities, spirits, etc. The other things that you create, because your whole system is just like one big orgasmic system. How is the heart pumping? Like, have you ever sat down and listened to just somebody's heart and just for a moment be like, man, this thing be pumping for like 80, 90 years. What battery do we have go 80, 90 years pumping?
Facts. Yeah.
You see what I mean? So it's like, we're just like now at this stage where since 2023 is coming, we have to realize we're at the height now of the knowledge of men. Like now all is disclosed. So it's easy now to see the narratives, meaning the stories that have basically caught our people up into just a complete loop and even a self-destruct sequence. We have to realize that we're such powerful beings. Any story that you're hearing about life and about existence, you still have to weigh whether or not that story is even real. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because of how the magnitude of what we're actually in. Because the thing is that you need to go with knowledge that cannot be refuted. What we call the gems. Mm-hmm. The gems, nobody can steal them from you because they rob themselves of it. It's like the moment they steal the gem, they rob themselves of the gem. It's like the real things in life that you will have to truly, truly seek. But now notice this, though, what I was reading about the type of civilization. When the civilization is very advanced, it utilizes the energy that is already being delivered to it. Like right now, we on a planet, and every day, like if you're out in the hot sun, that sun has got energy coming off of it, and a panel will take the energy and store the energy somewhere, right? But that's not all that the energies that are moving around, but that's one of them. But notice how if we got to mine every day, which is what going to work is. Because when you go to work, you got to use your mind, so you're mining. That's all the mining the gold stuff, right? Like it's like now that you're going to mine, it means that you're on a whole backwards ass technology now because you don't need to mine. Like what do we mine for? We mine for resources, and resources are energy.
Yes. Right?
But if energy is already coming, all we would need to do is just put ourselves in the position to receive. We wouldn't have to be miners. This is why magic doesn't work very well in these new systems that they've created with all these different entities and all this kind of stuff. Most of that shit don't even work. This is why most of the people that use it, they still be living at their grandma's house. You don't actually see the proof of the wisdom of the type of people that it's supposed to produce. And this is something where we would have to just look at personally as ourselves and be like, okay, check, it doesn't work. What's next? And you just got to be in your paint by yourself. It doesn't matter if everybody else agrees that it doesn't work. Like religious systems don't work. They're broken for real. They're about religion. So anytime they start talking about Jesus or any of that stuff, get away from it. It's not even something you should play with, the entities that play around with that, right? But yet, you know, even right now, it's like they're cooking off a half-baked, I talked about it's like a half-baked Antichrist. We get like a B-rated movie Antichrist. This is how watered down the reality is. Even the prophecies are coming out like watered down, like, damn, I thought the Dajjal was going to have like one eye, and like with the other color eye, they was going to come from the east. They was going to be flowing with robes. The sky was going to get dark. You know what I mean? They had like this, and it'd be just Kanye West and Alex Jones sitting up there dooming everybody and dooming the system and dooming themselves because they bought into a narrative. And then you got to think, okay, so will those beings rapidly be making it to a type 1, type 2, type 3 civilization? Because that's when you got to look back in yourself and say, what kind of civilization is this? Like all of these beings that I got that live inside of me, how is the real communication going on between the king and his land, right? Which is the body. And if people miss that, for instance, like the whole thing is so super connected. The ley lines that run down the earth, which are the same ley lines people go down when they die. Like, do you know when you die, you go down a highway right away? It's called, and they're straight lines. That's what they call the old straight track. And cemeteries generally are always where the big like the LAX or the ATL of where the whole transfer is about to go, because this thing is definitely not finna waste anything what we're in. People be thinking they're gonna die. So you think you could get out of it that easy? See, we created death because we were afraid of life. We needed something to kind of stop life and start life over again, because we would get headlong in the infinity crazy stuff that we needed to be like, okay, we need to stop and start again. You know, sometimes that happens in your life where you like, man, look, let me start over again in life. So that's called death, but it's not real. And what this is about now is like, so you got an ancient system, right? So now when I say type 3 civilizations, all you had to do was read in the book that I said, the alien wombs and alien parents for the czars, which were the Sudanese women, were calling upon Zarin or Jinn from the stars and impregnating women with the entities, okay, which is the core of most of the magic you're looking at today. And a bad replica, by the way, because they don't know the rituals. They don't know the entities. Most of the entities are unclean. There's a whole different language to talk to these other beings. And the oracles and the czars, they were the one, the mermaids, etc. They were the ones that spoke that language. So when they cut off their mother, like what you see Orion is sitting there, you know, he's hitting his mother Taurus. When they cut off their mother, they really could not actually continue to interface with all these high levels of knowledge and wisdom, because it takes a certain level of ground and power, but it doesn't mean that you won't be able to impress everybody on a type 1 civilization or like a third world. Mm. They always talk about third world country, right? What about a third world where you come there and the cats are still fighting each other? They didn't have any reached singularity yet. What is singularity? It has nothing to do with some computer systems. Those are the replica byproducts, Borg. Real singularity is when the organism, which is made up of positive and negative currents, is magnetic field, which we call the torus. But in that process, this field is unified and working together, but consists of opposing poles. This is the same thing as if a male and a female are together, and then they, even though they're different, they decide to bring their two energies together to work for something that's going to benefit the two. Versus male and female could be together totally in conflict, not feeling each other, feeling the opposing forces, choose not to work together, but still be around each other, but actually be working against each other. You see, that's the easiest way to understand the field that you're talking about, because when you start thinking of positive and negative, you'll get caught up because you think negative is the bad one and positive is the good one. We went beyond that, right? Mm-hmm. But then most people never went beyond that because they're still trying to find the bad one and the good one. They still have this good category and bad category to place everything in. But the truth is, again, the reason why we have nighttime, the reason why bad things do happen to us, the reason why we have bad dreams, etc., is because we're not made up of completely good. Mm-hmm. We're not beings that are what you would call good. We're not beings that are just made up of one pole. So now, you know, this process, you know, just zooming in again to what you're asking, the process is that you would go through and you would actually heal these situations. Now, there's a standard way that people kind of look at healing, and they think of forgiveness. Like, I got to forgive it. And then they just be like, well, I can't. A lot of
people think, yes.
The thing is about the organism, again, that we're in is when you're trying to do something that requires the body with the mind, it's not possible. So watch this. So the mind, it is fascinated with power and knowledge and all of this stuff, right? Like the mind, if you let it tell you, it's the most powerful thing. And it can talk about all of that, but be put into a situation and start cowering itself. Because courage, it comes from the body. It comes from this, right? Like, so all this is like, now you got to go and do. That's why your hands are here. That's why your feet are here. You got to go and do what you were talking about. So you can say in your mind, man, I'm the most toughest. And then when a situation pop off, now your body is involved. You see what I mean? So the mind will be like, but because it's up to the body now to show how courageous it really is. You see what I mean? So this is where the mind has to be in alignment with the body, because folks be trying to like be just the mind and fly off. And the problem is that then they can never heal. Mm. See, it takes courage to come back in the body. That's why they be trying to leave. Mm. And the reality in the society, it perpetuates this leaving our responsibilities, leaving our creations. Mm. If we were the originals, we created everything. No different than something must have created us. No different than something must have created that until you get into the motionless, which we will not speak of. Like that was really the knowledge that they was like, this is the black goo. This is the dark matter. We don't talk about it because we know it's the access point basically to our infinite. It's like anytime we feel like something's not possible, we ping that. And it overcomes everything. It's not something that we have to, this is kind of like why in Islam, in the truest tense of it, you don't draw pictures of God. You don't try to even call God, say God's name or nothing like that. It's something that's kept into like, no. Come on. We won't even assume that you would think you know what you were talking about in the state that you're in. So then what it would do is it would be able to set up like goals for us. Like things that we know that, hey, I'm going to eventually reach that stage. Now we believe sometimes that we just already have accelerated the entire ladder. So, and then we be still struggling, still can't figure out what's going on in the matrix, this kind of stuff. So that's why I said the mind's got to align with the heart. And so this is a good time during this build to just really, really lay, esoteric knowledge in itself, mechanics to the realm that we're actually living in. Entities that, are in the space, et cetera, all that stuff can be very clear. It could be clarified, and that does kind of depend on, just the host in himself, though, because, the host, the host is the key to harnessing the power and the potential of the guests.
The host.
And bro, Rich is
that's what I do. I harness. I literally harness the. That's why they love me. I harness. I listen, Seven. My mission is to not as the host of this show, but even I'm a music producer. Even as a music producer, even in life, I could bring the best out of somebody. And I noticed, Seven, and this you don't have to respond to this because I'm about to go on to the next question. In life, what I noticed that I even had the ability to bring the worst out of a person. And that's when I realized my power. I could bring the best or the worst out of a person. So I choose to bring the best out instead of bringing the best because I know how to evoke emotion. That's one of my superpowers. I can evoke emotion. I could, from somebody. I could draw it from somebody. So I'd rather draw the best than the worst out of somebody. Yes. But I'm absolutely glad we started the way we started, my brother. I mean, the chat is absolutely super glad that with the way we started and you answered my question. Your name is Seven, though. I want to go into this, Seven. Your name is Seven. Powerful name. Powerful name. Seven is written all over the Bible. It's written in stories and movies. Seven this, seven that, seven this. If we start the days of the week with Sunday, Saturn, which they say is Saturday, becomes the seventh day. So 7 Saturday. 7 is connected numerically to Saturn. So talking about Saturn and talking about time travel, because they say Saturn, they call Saturn Father Time. They say Saturn is connected to time. One of the things I noticed you said in the past, and I want to ask you about Saturn. It seems as though no matter what I talk about in the occult realm, Saturn pops out of nowhere. Whatever I took, Saturn just seems to always pop up, no matter what I'm talking about. So if your name is Seven and 7 is Saturn, I heard you say before an ancient name for Saturn was Zervan. Am I right, sir? Zervan?
Zervan, yes.
Zervan. So this is something 90% of the population never heard it before. And when you said that, Seven, it made me do a little research, and I was researching on the internet, and it said that a Phoenician historian by the name of Sancoathon or something like that, who he's believed to lived before the Trojan War, recorded that the ancestors of the Phoenician was Cronus, which is Saturn, and they called Saturn Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That's some deep shit.
Wow.
So an ancient name for Saturn is Israel? I need you first. Are you moving around? That's body language. 7 is like.
Well, no, I'm readjusting. Like I was sitting on that
that's
one.
Body language.
Yeah.
So keep it in mind what you said about Saturn being called Zervan, which the majority of us has never heard of, and even they saying Phoenician historians is saying the ancient name for Saturn, they called it Israel. Saturn is the Lord of time. We're talking about time travel. You got to tell me a little bit of history about Saturn and all the stuff I just mentioned. Israel, Zervan, all of that, my brother.
Yeah, you know how they say we live life forward, but we understand it backwards.
Yes, sir.
And, I can definitely say that in my life, I have only been able to learn from my experiences, but it takes me to have to look at my experiences. So even when we're kind of cruising through life and we're getting these names, because, you know, sometimes you get a nickname, you know, my first name is James. So what do all these names mean? Right? Like if James itself, it basically means son of Yah, right? So what we've learned in the same, or not, if not identical, but very similar system to what was his name, Lord. It's a gentleman that you have on your show who's excellent with the numbers.
Lord Strayhorn. Lord
yes,
Strayhorn.
Strayhorn.
Lloyd Strayhorn. I'm sorry, Lloyd
Yeah,
Strayhorn.
Lord Strayhorn, which is, you know, this ancient system of numbers, which is Joytisha, is so replete. It gives to me the best definition of what numbers can do and how to really dissect the code today. So when I started looking at just the notion that, especially a first name, like the destiny number, the first name, the first letter, the first vowel, that you were able to basically get a superficial snapshot of what the person is like. Okay. And this is, of course, until they graduate the game. Because in itself, the game is a series of numbers from 1 to 9. So actually 7 is a secondary system. Like 9 is the real system. 7 is the absence of the two other colors, which is black and white. Okay. Right. So this is when you start understanding that numbers are actually entire archetypes within themselves, which host ideals that will always be present in the realm. They are like in themselves things that can be pinged because they signify the processes of the creation of life within this realm, right? And so it redundifies all the way down to the finest of forms. So what I assume happens is, because again, you know, like you would say your mother gave you the name, because your mother, as we've seen in the legalese and what goes on with, you know, how they even form a new entity and all of that with the legal system is that the mother is the informant. She's the one that's filling out the form. And so in that way, it's kind of like, well, the mother is going to be giving the name to the child. And then with everything in the matrix, you always have this quote unquote positive side of it and negative side of it. And then the necessity of balancing that. And in the event that you end up balancing out that path, then, you know, it's like if you master any path, you will be able to basically see the algorithm that exists within all paths. So I believe that this life, it is highly possible that I arrived in this path of severity, as it's called, because I definitely have went through a lot, and I can definitely see how I've had to really, really just be in my own lane, not like so easy to bend and break. I've had to be basically very, very rigid even in my own personal ideals of what I think is possible here in this planet and the potential of what could happen. I can for sure say that I've wrestled, like many have, against the negative side of a lot of that power. And we talked about before how, first of all, you survive in the test of time. So what I believe is that you should just always keep it on the level. What you see is what you get. And because when I came into this, I didn't come into this like without having my whole slate wiped clean already. So it wasn't like anything that I was expecting from the conscious community or expecting from anything for that matter. I actually was looking for that next level up onto another situation because I already seen it. I had already touched it. I've already been into something that is of such a high level of energetics. And it's just simply because, like, on this side, it seems like energy is scarce. But the truth is that there's more energy than you can even handle. So what it really becomes about is how you handle your energy. And so on this path, there's a lot of energy moving through. And I felt like because I was like one smarter in that way, like I knew, yo, don't let the energy take you out. And I've always had a lot of control over my mental consciousness. When I was seeing a lot of that Saturnalian kind of energy moving through, which is a father energy for sure. Like I have a whole breakdown of this. I'm not even going to go through it right now, but I talk about Venus and Saturn. Like even that numerology system that Strayhorn is working with comes from Shukra, who's Venus, but then Venus becomes Lucifer now. Satan becomes the devil. And so all these things are re-engineered in many ways. And that's what I find about the narrative, is that whatever it can be to make it negative for you, or what I would say is distorted for you, is kind of how the reality cooks it up. So they will focus on this quote unquote negative side of Saturn, or negative side of Mercury, or negative side of Jupiter, and bring that, and just kind of miss that the whole system is that these are the organs in the body that we're talking about. And 7 in the body is actually the bowels, right? Which they call Baal, right? So this is the part of the body that's responsible for removing toxins. So if you don't defeat Baal, if you may, or put Baal in alignment, then your whole reproductive system and your root chakra and your finances won't grow. They won't be of any substance, right? You won't have a vigor. You won't have a legacy. You won't have loins, which is like a lion. And then, so when you look at the symbolism of, again, if we're going to go into Israel, what you're looking at is you're looking at basically a system of knowledge that is, again, taken from the mother, though. I mean, it's cut and clear, you know, that, again, the oracles were the ones where in the Vatican. The oracles are in the Vatican. The Jesuits that are there now are sitting on the portal, like the Kwisatz Haderachs and the covens and all that. They're sitting on the portal so they can get information and knowledge that's coming to this planet before, you know, people have that knowledge and information, or can divine that knowledge and information. So they hack that information. You know, there's a lot of, you know, great atrocities that are happening really in the space, even though if we want to stick our heads in the sand, like there's been the whole cover blown off of that. Our children are basically really being harvested for their energy. And there's untold atrocities happening in the dark. And as I said before, because the narrative, which is, you know, even some of this ancient alien narrative and this kind of stuff is almost like it's like you don't even have much of the pages of the book of the beings that you're actually talking about, let alone to kind of realize what kind of time and space they would be living in and what they're doing. But then yet we've adapted their entire culture. And their entire story. And in this way, I'm talking about the Abrahamic traditions and all of that theos, which is not native to this world, if you may, meaning that all that didn't start here. And so a lot of times we have to even ask ourselves, as I said, again, since you just in this little maximum 72 year turn, this time of existence, before, you know, you go into your next existence, you have to ask yourself if you want to spend your life actually doing the same thing that you already have seen somebody else do and fail and reach nothing. Because that's the beauty of being in the future. Like, we're thousands of years after many prophecies. We're hundreds of years after people have said certain things to see what the results of what they said, like what happened. And so if we're examining such things, it should give us a really sound idea of where we should go, like what is really the truth and what we should be doing with our life and our soul. And I know a big part of that is for sure about caring, because it's a dead ringer that the reality, as I mentioned before, so how this planet works and how this organism works and how the atoms and everything work is that you actually, if you can connect to them, they are your protection. So it's almost like if somebody's coming and get to you and it's just they've run, trees fall in their way, and, you know, stuff's not working, the stuff rusts, gas goes out of the car, the whole nine, because it's like all of nature, which is everything the planet is made out of. No matter what you're talking about, everything here is made from nature and just refined into something different, but it all comes from nature. So when you're connected to the planet, all those things are actually in service to you as you are in service to it, because you're actually connected to it. So when we become disconnected from the planet, we lose our protection, because our protection is the planet. It's not magic from a sense of like occult books, circles, spells, all these kind of things. All that stuff is called lesser grimoires. Any magician knows this. These are like the scraps from the table of a mage. And now we can, I don't also like to talk over the head of anybody either, because obviously this is 14 years just in the public working with spiritual, occult, and esoteric knowledge. So for me, it would be a little bit different than the standard person, because the time that they spend even at work, I spend that time reading through something and connecting things. That's why we all work together, because then I can just tell you what I know and I can bring you up to speed. And you will have to trust that, well, shoot, he's going to obviously be a little bit more exact because he has the time to spend in it. So that's how we used to do it in ancient times. We would technically pay somebody to go out to the woods and don't contact anybody and just keep getting stronger spiritually. We would take care of them and let them do their thing, especially if they showed they had an affinity for it, because these beings were, of course, very, very valuable. Because now, if you think about what I was saying before earlier about a type 3 civilization, what is it, or type 2, what is it to communicate with a star? A star is a vibratory frequency. And we already understand now that every vibratory frequency, which is light, which is memories, it contains data. So when you start being able to actually extract data from stars, not energy, because I know someone immediately was like, well, shoot, if the sun is there and we can get solar power, what kind of power can we get from other stars, and they're so dim? Exactly. It wouldn't be that kind of power, that raw power you're going to use to power a vehicle. It's actually data and information. And what you would have to do first, though, is you would have to put your vehicle in the condition that when you receive that information, that your vehicle just didn't go into all-out warfare with itself. You see what I mean? That's like when you talk about mental health, this is mental warfare going on. And it's the proponent is that the God that is in this realm right now, his name is war. So you go to work because that's war, W-O-R. They worship, W-O-R. So it becomes very easy to track beings, if you may, through the code, through just three-letter words, three-letter numbers, right? But I would still, or three-letter words and stuff like that. But I would suspect, because I've asked these things about even myself, like even, my name, James Evans Bomar III, because Sevan is just Evans with S moved in the front of it. But before that, people call me Sevan because I realize in Atlanta, the last thing you want is cats knowing your name. I'll pause for that. The last thing in Atlanta you want is cats know your name. So I just look, just call me a number. So that way, right away, you know that ain't my name. Right. So then later on, I realized in my middle name that if the S was in front, that it was Sevan. And so I rolled with that, because at the end of the day, something will happen in the consciousness, and it will sometimes tell you that's, as Strayhorn probably have mentioned, that your middle name is what you can be. So they say that your first name is what you are, the middle name is what you can be, like you could float to it, and then your last name is what you were.
Damn,
right?
My middle name is Michael, man.
In other cultures, they got like 4 or 5 last names, but that's what it represents, right? Because it represents the lineage of the last name, right? But now you're carrying all of that, or you lost it. And so this is also the thing about where we're at right now with all of this, is that our relics have basically been hijacked. Our technologies have been stolen. And it looks like to us that the things that we should be using are actually the things that are creating bad things in the planet. That's pretty much what the narrative is right now, like pyramids and what all this means. As a simple concept, what a pyramid means is when you take all your energies and focus it into a point. And you need to learn how to do that anyway. It's called focus. So if you brought that into a external world and then created a chart for men to rule over each other and then said, that's what the pyramid is. And then everybody ran off and believed that, because that was like the top-down system that you would kind of visualize when there's like a hierarchical structure with the military. You see how it's like there could be a conflict of the definition of the maximum of the symbol, right? And then so this would then require you, because everybody is going to have an issue in the matrix with what you're doing as you're pushing through the matrix. So there's going to be people that it's kind of like that whole thing where they're trying to find something wrong with you. And people, to me, I'll be laughing at them because they don't understand I spend all day doing that, trying to find something wrong with me. So I'm like, yeah, help me, because I want to make sure that if there's anything out of alignment, that we got that thing in alignment, because that's how I know I stay in tune and I can keep receiving. So that's why when the transmission come in, because I'm going through my process through of healing, right? But I've learned to stop killing. I've learned how powerful that I can be when I really don't like something or someone or even whole nations. Because how powerful are you really? And that's why most people don't have any power, because if they get some power, they would just destroy us all.
Yeah.
Because we didn't bring them sandwiches or something, something petty. Like we act like we're not coming off of a clear past where people have had issues with power. They get a little bit of stuff and they're already trying to boss up over everybody. This is not the guy that you give control of the entire tribe to, right? So we have a situation because, see, in many ways, the beings that are lording over the reality, which are like dogs, they're like in themselves like what they call the master race. And a master race is more like how a dog will kind of corral sheep and corral goats. So it's not like it's smarter than the sheep or the goat. It just has a different demeanor and a way to corral and control. So you can see how genetically what's happening is that when you do get deep into the netherworld, because you were beginning this build today with reading off what is incorporated in the Isles of Osiris, which is basically where your heart is about to be raided and that your organs are going to come and testify against you. So these organs, which are the 7, right? They in themselves, they call themselves the archons. Okay, because they're the organs, right? And these systems themselves are in agreement. They agreed on Mount Harmon, which is where we get the word harmony from. And they agreed to do this thing. And what that means is that just how your heart and your lungs and your spleen and your kidney, and they all do different things, they all play a different tone or a different vibration, but they all work together to accomplish the great work, which is actually bringing you back to life from the Isles of the Dead, from the netherworld. Now, the netherworld was already known from deep times before the sun got here. That's why it says that the sun or the spirit itself was hovering over the waters of the deep. So the waters were already there. And in those waters, there was degrees in the netherworld. So these beings, what you would say is semi-aquatic, you would say them amphibian, you would say them even reptilian, also very vast, because generally when you're in a very large space and gravity is not interacting on you, you get big. Just like when you put certain fish in a bigger fish tank, they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so they get as big as a fish tank. Nobody has traversed the ocean, because it's a galactic thing, like what you would call like a galactic law. Right. The cutoff is at the shore. And then when you get on the ocean, you're supposed to be a sovereign, because if you're on the water and you don't know how to produce what it is that you need, then you'll die out there. Also, you need to know how to navigate, because you'll get lost out there. So the ocean is the real outer space, okay? But the deep in itself and the entities in which that live in the deep, the way a person ends up arriving there is when the debts from their lives, where they're asking for a variety of things, and they're saying that they're willing to give something to receive that. So this is basically even the root itself of what we call magic, which is asking entities for things. This is why in the religion, which is the root of a lot of this, people are constantly asking this God for things, assuming that in the event that they receive it, that it doesn't want anything back. And in addition to that, they never catch that it's only until they're very fervent about asking what they need do they get it. And it's because it's with their own energy. That if you entreated for something, meaning you wanted something so bad that you just really sent out a vibration that I want it, the real want not the, the real need. It gets into needs, right? When you can send out that kind of frequency, it'll happen because it happens on your own power. But many people, they subscribe partners, as it's called. They basically say, well, it was because of Jesus that I got this car. When really much of everything that was conducted, if not everything that was conducted to receive that, was done from the person's own energy. But there's a broker there. I got to get some water here in a minute. Now, this broker.
Take your time, brother. Take your time.
Because this is important. This broker, because it's what happened to the spiritual system. These brokers are like now the ones that are actually mastering these contracts and signing these contracts and creating these contracts, because what they do is they get between a person and their energy, basically. Your highest level or higher self, they kind of get in between you and your higher self, and they try to broker a deal between you and your higher self. Believe it or not, as silly as it sounds, it even sounds more silly when you imagine that we fall for it. And humanity will fall for giving their energy away to something else to receive something that will be less valuable than the value of the energy that they gave. So it's a bad deal. And that's really what it becomes to actually be a sovereign, is that you actually have to learn how to come into your life and basically be the Lord and the master of your life and stop subscribing to entities or idols. Now, this is interesting because there's a lot of idolization. But the reason why idolization to a god is forbidden is because it basically makes you send all your energy to something else. And if you're not familiar with what that is, we are supposed to be familiar with our ancestors, right? So when the connection with our ancestors is severed, we don't have to go to anything external to connect that, to reconnect that. We don't ever even seen the real spiritual plane before, right? So in conclusion, I want to also say that the deep level of knowledge here is that everything is really about your foundation. You have to have the courage to go back in if you need to rework your foundation and get on something solid. And the reason is because obviously when you even grow up in dogmas or you have things happen to you when you're younger, you base everything that you're experiencing on the world from those dogmas. So everything goes into that, like I said, angel or devil category when you have a heavy Christian religion programming sitting under the layer of your metaphysics. You see what I mean? And then so sometimes you got to go back and watch your consciousness and watch your mind and see how much of that residue is still left that is allowing you to go on with certain absurdities that is short-circuiting your very energy. In order to have access to the complete cosmos, you must have a pass. The way that you get a pass through the cosmos is that you actually will help all of the children. You don't care what color they are, any of that you will help the children as if they're your own. Because see, what a bad judge does is we got bad judges in the world. They judge the children and like they're not theirs. Like they'll give a young cat 20 years, but he'll never give his son 20 years. So he's not treating that child like it's his child. Because he'd be like trying to rehabilitate his son and all that kind of stuff. So our hard north is always to let us know that we are basically upholding the children for real. And we don't care what color those children are. Because every being coming into this space is to be given the proper opportunity to travel, to not only explore, meaning to go out into the reality and to be mentored by the reality, but also to go into that, into the internal. The internal and to be able to, as we call it, the innerverse, and to be able to explore themselves within. So now, we kind of we're reaching that peak point. So what are we going to taper off into?
Man, listen, Sevan, man, I'm going to close it out. I want to thank you. I want to get you back on here in January though, my brother. Yes. We talked about January, and I know you want to, as far as the ads, and you got amazing stuff going on. But I want to get you back on here in January, and we could take some Q&A from the people, and as well as continue to build. But man, this was legendary tonight, my brother.
Man, would be lovely. Like we could just make, that next engagement just for the people. We come right in, because we could go anywhere with this. But I trust that, that what was transmitted today, not only was pleasing to the soul, that lets us understand that there's other passageways, you know, that to ourselves to clear certain things up, like to really, again, see this organism and how it all is us, even the planet that we on. So, you know, to also realize that, you know, even bad neighborhoods are dirty ley lines. Right. And you can, if you knew how to work the ley lines inside of your own body, which were the nadis, and clear them up, you can go right into a neighborhood and clear up the neighborhood on a level of geo-energetics, meaning that you know how to put certain things in the neighborhood that shift and open up the energy, like you're doing acupuncture or acupressure in the neighborhood. Right. But see, what happens again is the reason why this sanctum is generally closed is if a person actually does have some hatred in their heart. And that's why when you see the mother, what the mother does is the mother will help a sick child.
She'll help anybody
without even thinking about getting sick.
Father be like, what the hell you doing?
Exactly. Father be like, yo, I'm going to be over here because I got to go to work tomorrow and I can't get sick. You see what I mean? But mother be there. And so in that embodiment of just being in it, like, look, I don't know what happened to your skin, but I'm in it with you. You see what I mean? It's just like really sojourning, because I do know that in many ways, again, we're sharing something, but somebody is trying to cure themselves consistently off of somebody else. And that's what's become the predatory nature in the reality, right? Is because it's like a relationship. I'll close down with this. Imagine a relationship where two people both need the same thing, but neither one of them can provide it. And they keep trying to get it from each other. You see what I mean? And then so this creates like a friction. And this is what be happening, is that if you can't get the cycle of caring and love going on and get the whole motor rolling again, that thing actually does really dry out, but it hits another direction. It doesn't end. It starts going into regret. It starts going into bitterness. This is the shed. You see what I mean? And that's why they call that God, the God of the Old Testament, is named Shaddai. He's a shed. He's even got pictures and shit. And it's just like the antithesis side. And that's what I wanted to finish off talking about the ancestors. The ancestors knew that there was like that's why they called it pantheism, because it was all of the movements of the sun. So they saw that when the sun went down and beneath the world, that it was going in the nether world, that you needed to see the soul like that. And when the sun took on its nether world,